We're concluding today chapter 39, discussing the concept leshmah. Leshmah means to do it for its own sake, meaning for this, not for ulterior motives, which we'll get into that today. What does that mean? What does it mean to study Torah, as we're doing right now, for ulterior motives? And if you're doing it for ulterior motives, should you maybe stop? Is the intent the most important thing? Or is the action more important? And especially when you're speaking about studying Torah, which, it's a holy engagement, so you might say, well, if you don't have the right intent, then, forget it. Good question, which we'll deal with. Now, of course, the proper intent, leshmah, means that through this engagement of studying Torah, or any mitzvah for that matter, we make a connection with God. There's many other kinds of intent that we can have, a human, value, but human value doesn't give it divine value. So we have to be careful that we don't get lost in the humanness of, get lost in it. We need the humanness in it. We need to be able to feel someone else's needs and be there for them in a human manner. But that being said, we need to know that the basis of it is divine. The basis is a divine connection. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is addressing. That's what he's addressing. So if you got the divine without the human, that's not good. If you got the human without the divine, that's not good. You need both. But the basis of all of it is that it's divine. It's about a divine connection. So therefore, if you're studying Torah leshmah, right, which means, again, with an awareness that through this, I'm getting connected, bonded, and one with God. That's my awareness. Now, whether that produces a real feeling in my heart of love and awe, or it just gives me that mental awareness, either one. The learning will not only bring divinity into this world, but it'll ascend and has an eternal place in the divine order of things, in the divine attributes above, with the world of Bria, world of Yitzir, as we've spoken previously. But what happens if a person learns explicitly not leshmah, not for no ulterior motive, but for an ulterior motive, self-glorification, honor? You know how many people look up to a rabbi because it's a learned rabbi, so therefore he gets honor? How many people, that I know this, and because of this, that makes me feel, self-glorified because I've studied, I'm a scholar of the Tanya, right? But for a person that really gives themselves over through Torah learning, it's very easy to get lost in ulterior motive, something that's going to be just self-glorification. Again, imagine you study, and because this is going to make you a scholar, you're going to get honor, you're going to feel good about yourself. And you want to feel good about yourself. Yeah, and we have to be honest with ourselves. The human condition is that every human being wants to feel good about themselves. And to rise above that is divine. So I want to feel good. Or I'm learning Tanya because it is the ultimate self-help book. That's self-glorification. It's not about a connection to anything divine. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be a value to it for me, but what's the kavanah? What's the intent? Is it leshmah? Is it for the connection? Or is it for, self-glorification? So what happens with that Torah that you study that has an ulterior motive connected to it? So the Alter Rebbe says, it's in klippah. Klippah is on the shell that covers over. And we have a paradox over here. Torah is holy. It's the word of God. It's divine. But yet, those words can be now in klippah that you've studied. That teachings can be in klippah because of the intent of the individual. And because they're in klippah, they can't ascend. Because klippah is a shell that is like, ball and chain that makes it stuck down here and can't ascend upwards to the divine order of things. Since it's in exile, now, that's only temporary, being in exile in klippah, because if we do tshuva, if we recognize that, I should be learning for the ultimate purpose is for the connection, the divinity in it, so then I'll return and I'll return to God. I'll fix that. And by fixing it, by doing tshuva, you take that teachings, and it's because it's inherently holy, and it's going to be elevated to the divine. So that's the way out. Now, because of that, our sages say in the Talmud that one should always engage in Torah study and doing mitzvahs. Okay. Torah study really brings it out because, being a scholar and, being looked up to by other people, that's a great motivation for people. People, like honor. People like to feel good about themselves, and when people, say wonderful things about them, oh, what a scholar, what this, what that, that's a great, motivation to become even a greater scholar. So, but our sages say that even if your motivation is not for the right reason, has ulterior motives, right? You should certainly, continue studying, because from not doing it for the right reason, for the right motive, eventually, certainly, the Alter Rebbe says, certainly, he adds to this saying, you will come to study and observe leshmah, for the right reason, for the right motivation, for the right kavanah, the intent. Because certainly the person's going to fix and mend their ways. No question about it, because no person will ever be banished before God. So the Alter Rebbe adds over here, certainly, to the teachings of the sages, that certainly a person will correct their ways. And from that study of Torah that was done for an ulterior motive, they'll do it for the pure motive of leshmah, for its own sake, for the attachment. And that what happens when you then do it leshmah, whatever you learned previously will be elevated, not just from this point onwards, but anything previously will be elevated to the divine, which means you can kind of retroactively fix whatever needs to be fixed, which is amazing. That's an amazing thing, that we have that opportunity. And the reason why is because Torah study inherently is divine, because after all, it is the divine word of God. Yet, what we can do to it is put it into a state of exile temporarily, but it will be released from there. So therefore, always engage. Now, the Rebbe, our Rebbe, adds an interesting thing. The phraseology in Hebrew from our sages is from within, not doing it for ulterior motives, you will come to do it for the pure motives. So the word in Hebrew, mitoch, means from within. So the Rebbe says, how is it indeed that we can come to do it for the right reason? Because from within, the wrong reason is the right reason. In other words, deep down in me, I really want to do it. I really want to do a mitzvah for the right reason. I really want to do it because it's divine and it's a connection and it brings divinity into a divine connection to me and to the world and for the world. That's why I want to do it ultimately. That's deep down within me. I just covered over with other layers of, an animal soul and a body that is just very self-absorbed and self-centered, and therefore will do it for ulterior motives. And I was motivated by it for the moment. But deep down in me, I want to do it for the right reason. And therefore, it's going to come out the right reason. And we will do it not for an ulterior motive, but because we want to connect. So that is doing it for the ulterior motive. Now, when it comes to study Torah, there's actually a middle ground, interesting, that the Alter Rebbe concludes this chapter with. And that is not someone who does it leshmah, in other words, with an awareness, a mental awareness or a feeling in the heart of, I'm, engaged now in learning a Tanya, or I'm being charitable, or doing whatever mitzvah, I'm eating my matzah, and I'm mindful of the divine connection, right? That's ultimate. Then there's, we just spoke about doing it for an ulterior motive, but there's a middle ground. And that is an individual who kind of is a neutral ground. What's the neutral ground? That you're not doing it for an ulterior motive. You're not doing it for leshmah either. In other words, you're kind of like in between. You're kind of in no man's land, in limbo in a sense. Nicht dahin, nicht daher, as we say in French or Yiddish, really. Meaning, like right now, you could be learning Torah and not have the mental awareness about the connection, and you might not be doing for an ulterior motive. It might be habitual. We do things habitually, and therefore it's not with an ulterior motive. So where does that fit in? Remember, for something to have an eternity to it, we have to give it kavanah, intent. We need to have a love and awe, or at least the awareness of that mentally, in order that it should rise, have wings, and fly to the divine order of things above, as we spoke about at great length in the past. And here, this person doesn't have it. So it won't soar. But yet, it's not in klippah, because the person didn't do it for an ulterior motive, so there's no negative force there. There's just not a positive force, not a negative, not a positive. So since it's not in klippah, again, because you're not doing it for a selfish reason, you're just doing it habitually. So therefore, all you need to do is review the thing again, and without tshuva, without any, changing of ways and paths, and when you just learn that piece again that you learned and do it with the mental awareness, then all of that learning that you did previously that was kind of habitual will be upgraded, which is amazing. Imagine retroactively what we can do. So now we have, with this awareness, we've learned so much Torah together, so much Tanya, and perhaps we've done it somewhat habitually. We haven't done it with a mindfulness. We were mindful in understanding and appreciating the teachings, but not about what is it, the kavanah, the intent, the leshmah, doing it for its own sake, doing it for the sake of the attachment, the bond that it creates. And now we have that in mind. What we learned previously in Tanya all gets upgraded, all gets a divine connection, has an eternal place, which ultimately we will have a pleasure from in Gan Eden and in the times of Mashiach. But that's not discussion now. That's not right. Now, in conclusion, the Alter Rebbe quotes from the Zohar an interesting idea that the same thing holds true when it comes to prayer without kavanah, without intent. Learning and to have intent in learning is much easier to do a mitzvah, but prayer, to always have kavanah, is a very difficult thing. So the Zohar says an amazing thing. He says that if you have kavanah in the prayer one time through the year, it picks up all the other times you said that prayer habitually, out of rote. Now, I pray 3 times a day. Many people do that. And, everybody's in different states of minds and heart when it comes to prayer throughout the day and days, weeks, and the year, right? And not always are you kind of, in the zone to be connected. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. That's okay. Say the prayer anyway. Because if you said Ashrei today with great intent, right, or you said leshmah today, for example, whatever it is, let's say you said Ashrei today with great intent, you upgrade, uplift all of the Ashreis, all of that prayer that you didn't say with intent previously throughout the year. And tomorrow, let's say you say the Shema with great intent, or you do the Amida with great intent. It upgrades all of the times this past year that the Amida you did. And the following day you do another prayer and you kind of focus in on that prayer. So this is, I'm talking to myself now because I know when I've learned this in the past. So what I've done is every day I try to take a different part of the prayer and focus in on it very specifically. Other parts I might go through more quickly, sometimes you feel like you're running through it. But I focus in on one. I've done that in the past and I've got to redo that once again to focus in a manner that that prayer I have real intent. And that prayer will upgrade all of the other prayers of that prayer, that particular prayer. So what happens is you can do a piecemeal prayer throughout the year, and what do you have? A whole prayer by the end of the year. In other words, your whole davening is complete because you're able to piecemeal things throughout the year. That's what the Zohar says. That's the Alter Rebbe concludes, and this is the idea that we said over here. Because remember, prayer, learning Torah, inherently these are holy acts. But the action is one thing, the kavanah, the intent of doing it leshmah, is another thing, and that we need to add that to it in our learning and our prayer and everything that we do. And that's today's timing class. Any questions, any comments, please share. A reminder to everybody on Facebook that if you do have a question, 2 question marks first, and then ask your question so that we'll clearly see that you have a question. Batya, Vilma, something to share, to ask?
It's a beautiful thing. I believe in the power of prayer as many people do. And, it can be different every day. And that connection is important. It always was important to me. So thank you for this teaching.
Thank you, Vilma. Rick asks, if we do not... Oh, go ahead, Bachi. You wanted to say something, please.
Yes, I did want to say thank you, Rabbi. That we do get into a habit of, when we're davening, just sometimes to lose focus on actually what we're saying, because we're in the habit of davening 3 times a day, and it's very motivating to know that we can just reconnect. And I wrote also in Chabad on Facebook, I know now that I can reconnect back to my first love, because sometimes we lose focus. And it's just a good way to know that just by concentrating and having intent one time with davening, that we can reconnect from the times of the whole year that we did not. Just thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank the Alter Rebbe for that. The Zohar, yes. But yes, it is very empowering, because like you said, and I have the same challenge, and I think probably we all do, when it comes to prayer, to davening. It's very easy to lose focus because you're not saying your own words. You're saying words that the sages put together. You're saying words from Tehillim, from King David, and because you say them, day after day, there's a rote that you have, which is good in the sense that it's something that is a daily given. The negative, the downside of it is that since it's given, we can easily be mindless in our davening, and therefore the fact that I can concentrate on one piece today strongly, and that will make a piecemeal of all of my prayers from the year, if I do that, piecemeal every day, is very, it's a relief, it's empowering, and yeah, Baruch Hashem, beautiful. So Rick is asking if we do not, oops, 1 second, just lost. Okay. Some things with my phone that I have a difficulty with today that I'm not. Rick, could you ask your question again and type it in again, copy and paste it, because I seem to have lost it. Matilda. Ooh, she's asking about Passover. Can we roast our lamb on Sabbath evening? If our understanding is that Passover falls out on Sabbath. Well, it doesn't fall. Pesach this year falls out Saturday night, not on Shabbos. So, and we should prepare our foods before Shabbos. And Saturday night you can cook. That Saturday night you can cook. Okay, about you, I know now. Okay, good. Anybody else has I know now? Oh. Rick is asking, how about a personal prayer, not in the siddur, done with intent? Does that ascend? I'm sure it does. When it's a personal prayer, then definitely intent is the main thing and the whole thing. I don't know the whole thing, but yeah, but the main thing is the intent. So will it ascend? It'll ascend. I don't know the exact order of things, how it works, but it will ascend. Absolutely. Danielle, does this apply to Bnei Noach? Intent and ascending, definitely on some level. I'm not clear of what the distinction would be. Any distinction would be, but definitely a Bnei Noach, meaning those who follow the 7 Noachide laws, the non-Jews follow the 7 Noachide laws, definitely prayer needs to be done with intent. Does it ascend? It ascends. I'm not certain, what the distinction would be, if any distinction. Good question. So Marjan, so we should continue. Should we continue to pray even if our heart is not in it? So remember, folks, I just want to remind you, prayer is unique in that respect. Other things should you give charity if your heart's not in it? Obviously. Should you learn Torah if your heart's not in it? For sure. Should you, put on your tefillin if your heart's not in it? For sure. Prayer, since it's really about the heart, so you might think, well, if your heart's not in it, don't pray. No. Pray, you have to pray. Why? It's because there's two elements to prayer. There's the body of the prayer and the soul of the prayer. Right? The body is the words that you are offering, and the words that you're saying, enunciating, verbalizing, and the soul of it is the kavanah, is the intent. So you need a body and soul. If you have just intent without the body, you're missing. You're lacking. So we need both things. So should you pray if you don't have intent? Absolutely. Now, should you maybe study some Tanya before your prayer so you will have better intent? Absolutely. That's what we Chassidim do. We even go to the mikvah, so we become more spiritually holy. And we study Chassidus before, study Tanya and other Chassidic teachings. Why? I mean, just for the mitzvah itself, of course. But why do we do it before prayer? In order that we should be in a right frame of mind when it comes to our prayers. Thank you for asking that, Marjan. Very important. Irma says, I know now that when I pray with great intent, it upgrades all other prayers of the particular prayer that I might have done without intent. Excellent, thank you. Denise, Shaki has a question, but didn't phrase it with 2 question marks. Oh, okay. Let me find it. Could you put it back in with 2 question marks again, so that will help me because I'm not finding it. And something's wrong with my phone that I don't have access to, so it's a bit harder. So I need it to be copied and pasted and put 2 question marks before. That'll help. Greg says this is really starting to make sense. Great, thank you for sharing that. Okay, did I miss? Rick, you actually answered my questions, which was so we need to repent when we do the mitzvahs without intent. No, that's only if we do it for ulterior motive. Remember, we have 3 levels: ulterior motive, leshmah, and in between, when we do things out of rote. It's not ulterior motive, so it's not in klippah. It's not bound in a negative force, but it's not a positive holy force because there's no intent. So we need. Majan just shared with me, thanking and watching in the middle of when the schoolers are about to begin davening. She's teaching in the school with my daughters in Atlanta. Thank you for sharing that. Beautiful. Okay, Denise, can you put up Shaki's question again? Because I don't see it. Oh, here it is. Okay. When we say self-glorification, unreality, you meant for personal glorification. Yeah, self-glorification, personal glorification, right. In other words, if I'm studying Torah, if I'm doing what I'm doing right now, so I can be glorified by the participants over here on how wonderful and thanking and so on, and that's what my motivator is, and that's why I'm doing this. That's an ulterior motive, right? And I thank you all for all of the comments that you make. Definitely, it makes it makes a person feel good, better than obviously negative comments or no comments. Absolutely, but if that's my motivation, to teach, then that would be not so great. And that's why actually for someone like me, this is a lot more of a line that I have to be careful with. I be mindful. I have to be mindful that I'm doing this because this is a mitzvah and this is a connection that I'm making to Hashem, and I'm fulfilling what God needs from me, rather than Now, does that mean you can't feel good about it? We're not talking about that. You're not feeling good about about what people might praise you and say. But that's not why you're doing it.
If I can say something about that.
Sure, go ahead.
Tanya is not an easy thing to learn. So I don't understand that concept of self-glorification and, you know, that instance where you're loving, you do something because, you know, you love that connection, you know that it's holy, and all, you know, all the things that you do alone just to study and become more aware and learn it has nothing to do with glory, which I never thought of. But
You're too
yeah.
pure. You're too pure, Vilma. That's why. So you know, so you don't
And
you don't
I
have that
teach for a
inkling.
living too, so I only teach things that I really, really like. You know, like I'm attached to.
So I think that's maybe the purity of your soul, but think about it. And the truth is, before Tanya, you know, and Hasidic teachings, there was and there still is this concept of honoring a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, and there is, you know, this idea of, you know, desiring to be a Torah scholar. There's great honor and accolades that come with it. You know, if you're living in a community that honors a great Torah scholar, and you know, so look, this person's a real honored person, and you know, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind having that honor too, that self-glorification. So, you know, it definitely in a community setting, not if you're learning on your own in the way we're learning here. You know, we're not learning, even though we've come together as a community on Facebook and Clubhouse, and people come together on Zoom in different places. But you know, if you're living amongst people, there is that glory that can come with it. So, you know, the Alter Rebbe speaks about it because there is that reality. But thank you for bringing that up. Sorry, just had another. Daniel is asking, should have Ben Noach study the Tanya before prayer too? Definitely a good idea to study some Chassidus before. And definitely, you know, the second part of Tanya is Shar Yichud, speaking about the unity of God. But yeah, definitely that's a good idea. Okay. Thank you for putting question marks before the questions, so that way I can easily see that. Shaki, when okay, no, got that. Okay. Can a non-Jew join? This is a Pesach question. Maybe we'll deal with it later on Zoom. Non-Jews for during Passover. There's some halachic issues with that. It depends. It's weather depending. If it's just coming to see what the Jews do, not really. If it's someone who's converting and needs to experience Passover because of their conversion, that's a different story. Or if it's someone in a mixed couple, you know, a Jew and who's with someone who isn't Jewish, so that's a different story. But it's just for coming for the experience, or to, you know, coming seeing how it's done or whatever. That's not the time. Shabbos is more the time, not the holiday. All right, folks. Beautiful. I think we're gonna call it a day. Oh. Michael, I'm going to the Seder with my hometown congregation online. I was just wondering if the Seder for one concept was addressed earlier. No problem either way. I'll watch the rest. A Seder, we should make it at after nightfall. Montreal, that's 8:01. New York, it's 7:57. Other places you have to check. Shouldn't start before that. And the Seder, even if you're by yourself, you're not. You're with God Almighty doing your Seder. Better do your Seder yourself than doing it on Zoom, being that it's a holiday. So we're online when it's not a holiday. As a matter of fact, this Saturday, obviously Shabbos, and Sunday, Monday, we won't have a class, but we'll resume on Tuesday. We'll have one tomorrow, God willing. But yeah, better is to do it, the proper way. Okay. Very good. Okay, folks. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. I thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you, Bill Mabatya, and everybody else.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Be well.
Thank you for being here Monday through Friday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Likewise, everybody be well. Thank you.